Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tons of Knowledge, Nonprofits 101 Cannabis Edition with Dr. Sharon Elefant, the nonprofit plug. You guys are going to love this webinar. She is a plethora of knowledge, everything that comes with operating a nonprofit, setting up a nonprofit, raising for a nonprofit, and everything in between. We think you guys are going to really enjoy this webinar. We thank you for joining. Tons of Knowledge is a webinar series hosted by the 40 Tons brand to just bring education and opportunity to our listeners, to our followers, to our fans, and to our constituents. We believe that if you pair education with opportunity and you bring both of those together, that's how you can have a real impact. It's how you can restoratively repair communities, and that's what the 40 Tons of Knowledge webinar series is all about. This particular edition is powered by Good Green. We thank the good folks at Good Green. They're going to be our title sponsor at our Level Up Career Conference happening in Chicago on June 19th at the Malcolm X College. So thank you, Good Green. Thank you, Dr. Sharon. Welcome to the building. Much love, much respect, Queen. Man, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. So nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Anthony. Hi, everybody. This setup is just so cool. Like 40 Tons of Knowledge. Any way we can drop a plug, drop a gem, 40 tons, let's go. It's going to be really cool. So I'm excited to be here. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Sharon Elefant, just like the animal. You heard that correct. I am the CEO and founder of the nonprofit Plug. We are a one-stop shop boutique consulting firm for nonprofit organizations. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've been in Los Angeles for about 13 years, but we do service the entire country. And actually, we do have a couple of clients that are international. So whatever the need is, we're here for it. I originally started out in the nonprofit sector. It's probably been about 15 or so plus years. And we were sort of providing strategic partnerships, getting people set up, hooking people up, linking people up, getting everyone connected. And I kind of got the nickname The Plug. And so my family thought I was dealing drugs. So we had to change that and clarify that I am the nonprofit Plug. So that's how the firm sort of like came to be. Anything you could possibly need is anything we could get you. But I just wanted to make sure that people knew it was in the nonprofit sector. So here is the nonprofit Plug. We form and incorporate nonprofit organizations. So those of you who are interested in starting a nonprofit organization, we do board management and engagement, financial management services, grant services. So we do grant research, writing, and we look for funding opportunities for everybody. Anything you could kind of possibly think of. We do provide some legal services if that's what folks need as well. So with that being said, I'm going to try and do my best to keep an eye on the comment section, or Anthony, just interrupt me. I do usually like to keep my presentations fairly informal because I like when people ask tons of questions or want more clarity. So feel free to blow up the comment sections and we'll do our best. I don't know if I'll be able to see the comments when I've got the presentation up, but we'll give it a try. So, but
yes. I'll make sure that I bring that up to you. There's also a private chat that's there for you and I as well. I'm going to go ahead and just play our video, and then after that, I will leave the screen of the webinar, and then you can get started. Okay, how's that sound? Awesome. So here we go, everybody. This is a video that we like to play. It's just the reason and the why behind 40 Tons. And we want you to understand why we do what it is that we're doing. We believe that if we're going to be making billions of dollars on this plant, that nobody should be in prison over this plant. And so we all come from the decriminalization, the prohibition side of cannabis. And so now that we've been given a second chance, this is our way to, pay it forward. So please enjoy this video, and then we'll get right into the presentation.
How do you absorb years of damage when so many of us have been burned?
Do we think that it's fair that the state can make $10 billion a year on this plant, but we can't pay our bills selling marijuana? Meanwhile, there's 40,000 prisoners still in jail right now because of cannabis.
It was all great until it wasn't great.
It's ridiculous that he's in there for marijuana for life. You know, they take everything.
I knew that if I created this movement, would be able to give to a cause that was just supporting the women that are left behind to pick up the pieces of their loved ones, supporting restorative justice.
As a husband and wife team, our hope for 40 Tons is that we get my friend Corvain Cooper out of prison. That's our first and number one goal. 40 Tons is the voice for the voiceless to try to free the cannabis prisoners.
Yes, that day is coming. That day is coming.
Yes, and that day did come on January 20th, 2021, when former President Donald Trump granted Corvain Cooper a presidential clemency. And so we worked hard to help get him out of prison, along with hundreds of people and other organizations all working collectively to do that. And so now this is our way of being able to stop the cycle of recidivism. It's, one thing to get someone out of prison for something, but it's another thing to keep them out. And in order to keep them out, we need education, we need opportunity, we need careers, and we need the ability to, make a living and create generational wealth for ourselves. And it starts with things like this webinar. And so thank you, Dr. Sharon. I will hand it over to you, and we look forward to learning about nonprofits.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. All right, let me get my screen shared. All right, Anthony, if I'm hoping I can hear you, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen. Everybody in the audience, if you can see the screen, please leave it in the comments.
All right, and I can't see comments, so I'm going to totally rely on you, because otherwise it's going to make me go, oh, actually, can you guys see it that way? And now I can see the comments. Yep. Okay, cool. All right. So welcome to Nonprofit 101. We're going to be plugging you in your nonprofit in all the right places. This is your, it's actually a series that we do. So today is plug into cannabis, since majority are you in the cannabis industry or maybe wanting to get into it. So we're going to just kind of keep it pretty general about Nonprofit 101, and we'll go with it that way. So what we're going to kind of talk about today is what is a nonprofit, why have a nonprofit, how it would benefit you and your community, philanthropy in the cannabis industry. So we'll talk about service equity, transforming beliefs into action, what it means to have a nonprofit, and how do you fund a nonprofit and sustain it? Like, that's probably one of the more critical components of all of this about Nonprofit 101, right? So what does, and I want to be able to see the comments, so I'm going to kind of jump back to the comment screen because I want to hear from you guys. What does it even mean, philanthropy in the cannabis community? Can you guys kind of maybe give me some ideas on what is social impact to you? How do you tie in cannabis in the community? What does it mean to you guys? I see a couple of names I see on there. Yeah, advocacy, helping people out of prison. Advocacy is probably one of the largest ones. What else we got? Yep, medicine to people who can't afford it, access to healthcare, lobbying, expungement clinics. Ooh, Michael, that was a great one. Yep. You'll even see that's on my list down the line here. What else we got? I know we got so much more. What does philanthropy in the cannabis industry mean to you guys? It could even be something personal. Social equity, Amber, that's a good one. Yep. Outreach, necessity drives. Free medical cannabis to underserved communities. I like that one. Sweet Leaf Joe. Workforce development. Winter Watts, social equity. Okay, you guys are good. All right, cool. So I'm going to go on to the next one. You can keep that going though, because those are really good. Okay. I just want to clarify. So philanthropy and the cannabis community, if you're going to be a nonprofit in this space, you must, at a bare minimum, align your group to right the wrongs that have been done in whatever the state your nonprofit operates in. So all of you are here today representing states from all across the country, and every state has their own impact, history, and statistics, right? On who was impacted, how they were impacted, and what that state is doing. So if you're going to be a nonprofit in this sector in the cannabis industry, it's going to need to be in alignment to right the wrongs that have happened and to serve our community, right? So that's why advocacy and social equity is probably one of the biggest components to philanthropy and the cannabis industry. So that's kind of how we're tying Nonprofit 101 into specifically cannabis, but it really doesn't even have to just be the cannabis industry. This goes for all industries across all the board, right? Nonprofits are here to provide a social good. So that's really what we're focusing on. So what is a nonprofit? A nonprofit, charitable nonprofits embody the best of America. So when we're thinking about nonprofits, they provide a way for people to work together for a common good, transforming shared beliefs and hopes into action, and give shape to our boldest dreams, some of the highest ideals, some of the noblest causes. I don't know if you guys knew, but America's 1.3 million charitable nonprofits, they feed, they heal, they provide shelter, they educate, they inspire, they enlighten, they nurture. And probably one of the best parts about a nonprofit is it's for people of every age, gender, race, and socioeconomic status. And that's really like the essence of what a nonprofit organization is. And then, of course, they foster civic engagement, leadership, they drive economic growth, and we're going to get into that because there's some cool stats about nonprofits. So I don't know if you guys picked up yet. I'm a total nerd. I love data. Data is also another critical component to your nonprofit organization. And then, of course, they strengthen the fabric of our community. And I want to highlight in that word community, unity. So we're going to focus on that. Okay, so this is some interesting stuff about nonprofits that people ask me all the time. What does nonprofit mean? And it drives me bonkers. It drives me bonkers that it's called a nonprofit, because nonprofits are actually one of the most lucrative industries besides cannabis. We can't even compete with that. But one of the most lucrative industries in the world. So just because it's called a nonprofit does not mean it's a no profit making machine. It's just that the profits are used differently and they're used for the community. It's not a profit that goes into our pockets like we would with a normal like LLC, S Corp, like those for-profit organizations. So I want you guys to change the mindset of being a nonprofit founder, of someone who might want to get into the nonprofit sector, or someone even who's a donor or a supporter of a nonprofit. We do not operate with that mindset that we are no profit, because if we operate in that mindset, how are we supposed to pay the bills, overhead, provide jobs, cover expenses, and ultimately serve the community? So although it's called a nonprofit, let's not think that way. Nonprofit is an interchangeable term with meaning tax exempt. So it's a designation. So the term is just technical. A nonprofit organization is a tax exempt organization. But let's think about calling it a foundation, a community organization, an entity that serves the community. But we're going to make some profit because we want to serve, and we also want to put food on the table. So keep that in mind. Anthony, I'm just checking in. Are there any questions so far? Because I can't see the comment section.
Negative. You are good to go.
All right. So when we talk about nonprofits, there's different conditions that must be met when you're becoming a tax exempt organization, right? So it's a specific designation with your state that you're in, and it's a specific designation with the IRS at the federal level. So a lot of you have probably heard the term 501c3. There's other designations. There's C4s, which are typically like a veteran organization, C6s, which are like business leagues. But the most common one that you guys have probably heard of is the 501c3 charitable organization. So that's kind of where this like whole nonprofit term comes from, is because the profits of these organizations go back into the organization and into serving the community. But remember, it's just a designation for the organization, and we're an entity that wants to bring in money so that we can do more. So I just want to make sure you guys get that understanding of what it means to just be a nonprofit organization. The longest term you'll hear is a 501c3 tax exempt nonprofit organization. So we're an entity that serves the community. And there's just no private benefit to any kind of, we don't do shareholders, we don't do ownership. So we don't say we own a nonprofit. We say executive director or a founder of a nonprofit. Nonprofits are public, so there is no one that owns it. All right, so here's the common type of a tax exempt organization. That's your 501c3s, your standard public charities, your Feeding America, your United Ways, your Goodwills, YMCAs. Those are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. They're public charities. It's just a designation that is used to be coded with the IRS for your filings and your tax purposes. There are other sections of the IRS, like I mentioned, C4, C6s, and other ones. But your most common one that you guys will be a part of is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Even like churches and religious organizations, they're a 501c3 designation, which I know surprises a lot of people. Churches and religious organizations are tax exempt 501c3 nonprofit organizations. So if you're a part of any of those, please help ensure that they are serving the community and providing a public benefit. All right. So just a couple of cool stats. I know everyone is all over the place on here, but of course, those of us here in California, this is not a shocker that we are the state with the most nonprofits. We are a large state compared to many states in the United States. California typically has a giving, character to it, although we pay a lot in taxes, so that's not very fair. However, keep in mind that these are nonprofit organizations, and there are millions around the world. We'll kind of get into a couple of those stats in a little bit. California has the most number of nonprofit organizations. Before I go on, you guys want to take a guess at who comes in second and third? I'm switching back to the comment section so I can see that. Anybody have a guess on who's in second and third place? I see a lot of people, a couple guesses from New York. What else we got? Those are a couple of good guesses. I think Amber guessed one right. Okay. A lot of you are guessing New York. It's kind of surprising. New York wasn't even like on this list. Okay, so let's check it out. Oh, you know what? New York was third place. My bad, guys. I don't know why I was thinking it was one of the ones from the South. Texas and New York. So at least we've got New York up here, California down here, and Texas kind of in the middle. It's one of the largest states. So those are coming in second and third place. Some of the other really large ones, the whole West Coast was definitely some of the most nonprofit organizations. Okay, so why have a nonprofit organization? Kitty, of course. Let me go to the comment section. Can you guys tell me why you feel like having Sweet Leaf Joe? That's a good one in Texas because of the churches. That would be hilarious, right? I'll have to see if I can drill down of the types of nonprofit organizations in the state to see if that would be, because that would be pretty interesting. That's an assumption I would make too. Okay, so why would you guys want to have a nonprofit organization besides community, of course? Let me see what some stuff in the comment section why we would want to have a nonprofit organization. Come on, let me see the comments below. Why have a nonprofit organization? Yep, government funding to get our needs met. Absolutely. Absolutely. Those are good ones, guys. Okay, so cannabis and nonprofit organizations and kind of why we'd want to get into that. So cannabis nonprofits can give back by investing in social justice, economic justice, workforce diversity and inclusion at all sorts of levels. So this is a whole new emerging industry, right? Cannabis and nonprofit organizations and sort of the stigma around cannabis and now it becoming a more mainstream discussion. So it's more, we're moving towards this new section, but the primary industry for cannabis to get into nonprofit organizations is going to be social justice, economic justice, workforce diversity and inclusion. And we'll kind of get into what some of those mean. Amber, I'm just looking at one of your comments. Our company gets turned down due to federal regulations despite having resources. Yeah, so when you're dealing with like cannabis and nonprofits and like some of the cash flow that comes through, there's going to be different ways that you can merge the two industries of philanthropy and cannabis. Okay, so some of the reasons why we may want to have a nonprofit organization, besides community, of course, fight racial disparities, fight incarceration, expungements. I think it was Michael who mentioned expungements earlier. Job fairs, housing, education, health and wellness, advocacy. Am I missing any from the list that you guys feel really strongly about of why you would want to have a nonprofit organization in the cannabis industry? And really, it could be an industry. It doesn't have to be specific to cannabis, but we're plugging to cannabis today. What am I missing from this list? Anything that you guys feel really strong about? Increasing access, I see that. Any other reasons you guys feel like that might be of benefit to our community to create a nonprofit? What about maybe research, cannabis research for medical use, for mental health protection, patient education? Absolutely. Re-entry, ooh, Carly, that's a good one. Re-entry for sure. Yep. Anything else that you guys feel really strong about? These are strong ones. Okay. So before I go, some just like really cool statistics, because I love anytime you're working with someone and you want to make an impact and you want to demonstrate need and you want to like make a point and just drill it into someone, I usually hit them with data. So there's some stats here on the screen. 1.5 million nonprofit organizations in the United States. They employ 10% of the United States workforce and 7.4% worldwide. 70% of the staff are international paid workers. 29% are volunteers. So you can see here from the data, the nonprofit industry is a major player in our workforce and in our economy. So when I'm telling you that mindset, when you have a nonprofit organization, shouldn't be about nonprofit, your mindset should be getting the funding in so we can serve the community and treating it like a lucrative business so that you can pay your overhead, pay your employees, get your volunteers, serve your community. Look at that number, total U.S. nonprofit annual revenue, $2.62 trillion. $2.62 trillion in the nonprofit annual revenue sector. So let's take that word nonprofit. Annual revenue in public service, $2.62 trillion. That number blows my mind. I don't know if it blows your guys' mind, but that blows my mind away. So the nonprofit sector, yeah, 10% of the workforce. This to me, these numbers are wild. I don't know what you guys are, and I really wish I could like hear you sitting at your computer right now because this shit is wild to me. So how about this? The nonprofit sector is the third largest workforce in the United States behind retail and manufacturing. Did anybody like have a clue about that? Third largest workforce is the nonprofit sector. That means they employ majority of people, providing the most jobs, providing the most service. And not only that, it's an entity that provides impact. So you don't like retail and manufacturing, like we're not like going to the store and spending money. We're the third largest third largest workforce in the industry. That number blows my mind. So, and 5.7 of the United States GDP comes from the nonprofit sector. So you can see that nonprofits are a huge part in the development of our economic growth, not just here in the United States, but for everyone. Ooh, Anthony, I see your comments. Are we having audio issues? Can everybody still hear me okay? Let me hear from some other folks that you can hear, no problem.
Please type yes in the comments if you can hear her okay, if it's not choppy.
Okay, we've got a yes from Amber. Carly, we've got a yes. Okay, cool. Do you guys have an idea of which state of all the United States, which state might be has the total percent of like nonprofit provides the most amount of employment? I don't know if you guys are going to believe this one. It was wild to me. They provide the most nonprofit employment. It looks like I have a good solid connection over here. It's not California. It's not California. Try going more east, you guys. Which state, United States, employs the most? Ooh, Michael, you're the closest so far. Let me see one more guess before I share, because that just blew me away too. One more guess besides California and Delaware. Delaware is the closest so far to the location. North Dakota, that's a good guess. It's Vermont. Vermont has over 250,000 people employed by nonprofit organizations. I would never have guessed Vermont. I just thought it was interesting. So my point is, you guys, nonprofit sector being the third largest workforce in the United States. So manufacturing and retail come first, which retail is going to be part of like the cannabis industry, right? Third largest industry is going to be nonprofit organizations. So Vermont has a number of employed people in the nonprofit sector. I thought that was crazy. Okay. So in what ways has a nonprofit made meaningful impact on you guys, your family, your community? As you can see from Anthony, when he introduced 4 Ones to you guys, what that little intro video just showing what they did for advocacy and how that impacted him and how that impacted his family in Corbin. That's an example of advocacy, and that's an example of nonprofit work. So is there anybody here that has had some direct experience from a nonprofit organization? How did that impact you? I'm going to kind of mention a couple of these while I see some comments come in the section. So there's a good chance every single one of you, whether you knew it or not, has been impacted by a nonprofit organization. Did you know that maybe the university you went to was nonprofit? Typically, university organizations are nonprofits. Ooh, Sweet Leaf Joe has had a nonprofit for over 25 years. Sweet Leaf Joe, put it in the comments what nonprofit organization you're with so we can know who you are. That is cool. So if you were born in a hospital, probably impacted by a nonprofit organization. Typically, hospitals are 501c3 hospitals. Did you grow up playing basketball at the local YMCA or the community center? That's a nonprofit. Did you have a dog that needed emergency surgery or maybe need to get fixed and someone else paid for it? That was probably a nonprofit organization. Probably every single one of us has been impacted by a nonprofit organization. Okay, so Sweet Leaf Joe's brought cannabis to patients for free in the in the rain or snow. Compassion. That's cool, Joe. Very cool. Joe, put the nonprofit if you want or website link in the chat box so we can all check it out. So you guys can see, I'm sure everyone on here in some way or another was impacted by a nonprofit organization. Maybe it was a rent subsidy, maybe it was housing, maybe it was food, grocery gift cards. Feel free to share in the comments how you guys have maybe been impacted or family members been impacted by a nonprofit organization. Usually it's universities and the hospital ones that are kind of mind-blowing for people, but those are nonprofit organizations. They take in donations. That's why people can go to a hospital in an ideal world and get care. And if you can't pay for it, you should be getting care. In an ideal world, it doesn't always work like that, right? Yeah, and just like Anthony put in the comments, if you can, everyone who has a nonprofit or maybe your favorite nonprofit, put it in the chat so we can check it out. Okay, so how would a nonprofit benefit you? So we know how nonprofit benefits the community, right? But why should we as an individual person start a nonprofit? So of course it's because our passion is to serve the community. I grew up under this concept. It's the foundation for my culture. It's called Tikkun Olam. It means to repair the world. That's what I grew up with. That's what was ingrained into my culture and to me as a character, as a person. So of course, my initial reason why I would want to have a nonprofit and why it would benefit me is, of course, for selfish reasons, because I love to serve. It makes me happy. It makes me feel good. Community impact. Now, second one is a huge one, right? Tax write-off. It's a major tax write-off. So let's be honest. Some people have nonprofits just for the pure benefit of getting a tax write-off, and that's okay because it ultimately serves the community. So not only is it a tax write-off for you individually because you're taking your own funding out of pocket and putting it into your nonprofit. So it's a tax write-off for you, but it's a tax write-off for anyone who wants to make a contribution, provide a sponsorship, maybe make in-kind donations. That's a tax write-off for folks. And of course, we all want as many tax write-offs as we can possibly get, right? So that way we can keep more money in our pockets, more money in our nonprofit, and serve the community more. And then one of my other favorite reasons why I would want a nonprofit is you get to be your own CEO. A lot of us on here are entrepreneurs. We want to work for ourselves. We don't want to report to anybody else. We want to be our own business individual. So you can be your own CEO when you have a nonprofit organization. Any questions on so far? Let me just take a quick pause. Oh, Kristen, cool. freedomgrow.org. That's a good one to check out. Any questions so far? I'll give it about another 5 seconds. Okay. So what does it mean to have a nonprofit organization? So let's say that you guys are wanting to start having a nonprofit organization, or maybe you already have one. This is going to apply to you too. So what does it mean to have this entity, right? Because you guys already know, like, I hate calling it a nonprofit, but that's the technical term. So that's kind of what we're going to do. So it means you're an entrepreneur. Like we just talked about, one of the reasons why you would maybe want to do that is because you get to be your own CEO, business management, the impact and data. So when you have this type of organization and you have this type of business, there's things that you're going to want to keep track of. The type of impact you're giving and the data. Data is critical. Data demonstrates to your donors, to your funders, to your community why your nonprofit exists, and even more so, more critical, like way more critical, why should someone support your organization? So you need to have that data. And then of course, it's really important to remember annual compliance. So you want to, each state has its own specific requirements for every single year. California is pretty hefty. We have requirements that are every year and then every 2 years. A lot of states have just an annual report. So what does it mean to have a nonprofit organization is you're going to have annual compliance. You're going to have impact and data. You're going to be your own CEO running this entity. So having those business management skill sets is going to be really important to build those. I'm just reading the comments to make sure I'm not missing anything. Ooh, okay. So, and I'm pretty sure everyone can see all the comments. So Michael just commented in there that he was on with a nonprofit organization for a local cemetery, 125-year-old nonprofit. Wow. And you formed a nonprofit fellowship to allow moving a group of attorneys for admission before the United States Supreme Court. So you guys can see, like, there's all sorts of reasons to have a nonprofit organization. You can get as specific as I want to support pit bulls, or you can be as general as I want to serve the community with food. And then, as you can see with Michael's example, all sorts of everything, anything that serves someone is a nonprofit organization. Anything that's serving, anything that's community, anything that's collaboration. I know a couple of folks who have on here have mental health programs. Anything that you guys want to do that is for the better good, nonprofit organization. So critical, right? How do you fund a nonprofit organization? So let's talk, we're going to hang out on this slide for a couple of minutes. So if you're getting ready to have a nonprofit or you have a nonprofit organization, funding is going to be critical. This is so that you can be sustainable, so that you can provide resources, so that you can pay your bills, put food on the table, pay your employees, hire yourself, because you can hire yourself for your own nonprofit organization, and ultimately provide some of the most impactful programming for your community. So how do we do that? First of all, you're going to want to create a funding plan roadmap. Your funding plan roadmap is critical. It's kind of like a money strategic plan, right? So we have a strategic plan for your organization. So you're going to do that with funding also. So your funding plan roadmap is going to look at three main pillars: donor cultivation, fundraisers, and grant readiness. The 3 bullets right there, the funding plan roadmap, that's what your funding plan roadmap is going to look at. So let's talk about donor cultivation. And I know I got a couple of attendees on here. I recognize it have heard me drill down on donor cultivation, right? So what you're going to hear me talk about a lot with donor cultivation is politricking. This is like my favorite term ever, and I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing back politricking. So, we use that term for a lot of different things. Politicking, same thing. I call it politricking. So when you're thinking about that, what that means is strategic partnerships, building relationships, understanding who to work with, understanding how to communicate with people. That's donor cultivation. Donor cultivation means developing a relationship with people and building a relationship with them for ultimately, you're going to ask for money. That's what donor cultivation is. So someone who's going to donate to your organization, and sometimes cultivating that relationship can take a couple of months, a couple of years. It just depends on how well you're creating that cultivation and that relationship. So that's donor cultivation. And eventually where you're going to be making the ask so you can get a check, get some cash. Maybe it's donor cultivation is even creating some volunteer workforce for your organization. So that's the first pillar of your funding plan roadmap, how you're going to do donor cultivation. And the first two, donor cultivation and fundraisers, this is your unrestricted funding. This is the best type of funding you could possibly get for your nonprofit organization, because for the most part, it's unrestricted, meaning you can do just about anything that you want with it. So if you need that to pay payroll for your staffing, you can. So let's talk about fundraisers. These are like, things you can do monthly. I know 40 Tons brand, you guys had that end of your party. These are good ways to do your fundraisers. Sometimes you can partner with a local restaurant where everyone comes that night, and a percent of what everyone purchased that night goes back to the nonprofit organization. This is like, when the kids come around and they're knocking on the door selling the candy bars. These are fundraisers. Maybe it's a gala, a sit-down dinner. Maybe it's a music concert. Those are fundraisers. Those can be a little bit expensive to put on. So what you want to do when you have a fundraiser is find sponsors, find donors from your donor cultivation, find other entities, other businesses that are going to want to partner with you and support you. The best way to put on a fundraiser is when you don't have to put a dime into it, but all the money is coming into your organization. And then the third largest area of your funding plan roadmap is going to be your grant readiness. So do you have a narrative of your organization? Do you have program descriptions? Do you have a strategic plan? Do you have a budget? Do you know how much it costs? These are some of the things that you're going to need in place to get grant ready. Are you in compliance with the state and with the IRS? Do you have your board? Does your board have bios? Then once you're grant ready, you're going to look at grant research. So you're going to do searching out there to see what funding opportunities are available. Then you'll do your grant writing, application, submission. It comes with post-award management, all of that good stuff. So that's how you fund a nonprofit organization. Now, also, what's not really on here, and a lot of people aren't really aware about, is that your nonprofit organization can provide services at a cost. It's called fee for service. For example, maybe you have a mental health organization and you provide therapeutic services. You can provide that at a cost. You can charge patients, you can charge people for that, you can do a sliding fee scale, and you can provide that pro bono for free. So just because you're a nonprofit organization, which you all know, I just can't stand that term, but that's the technical term. So if you're a nonprofit organization, you can charge people for your services. Another example would be maybe you have a nonprofit that has an after-school program for kids or for tutoring. You can charge for those services. You can have a whole rate sheet. You can have a scale, sliding scale. You can change that. And then, maybe the kids that can afford it and those families that can't afford it, their higher amount pays for some of the kids in the families that can't afford it. In the cannabis industry, maybe you have a nonprofit organization that provides resources or research or access to medical services. You can bring in other revenue by doing a fee for service. So I know that that's a large topic and usually where I get some of the most questions. So let me pause for a minute and see if anybody has any questions on how do you fund a nonprofit organization? Donor cultivation, fundraising, grant readiness, fee for service. Maybe you're selling merchandise, hats, sweatshirts, mugs. Any questions on any of that? So I'm just going to keep this slide up for a minute because we'll get to the next one. But any questions on how you fund a nonprofit? So now you all know why having a nonprofit is good for the community. You all know why having a nonprofit is good for you personally. You know the benefits of having a nonprofit. And now we know how to fund a nonprofit. So how do we start a nonprofit, right? Are you ready to serve the community? Are you ready to start a nonprofit organization? A lot of you already have nonprofit organizations on here, so maybe you want to go to the next level. Maybe you want to get into more funding opportunities, developing your board, leveraging your board, teaching your board how to leverage their networks and coaching them on how to make that ask for money. You want to teach them how to politrick. And maybe you don't have a nonprofit, but you're thinking about it. So you're ready to file with the state and with the IRS. Is there anyone? Oh, okay. We have a question here. How would you show that you're not using the merchandise funds for profit? How would you distribute that back into a $0 profit? Okay. So that's a great question. So typically an organization, a nonprofit organization that is selling merchandise, you'll want to work with your tax exempt specialist CPA. But when you make the sale of, let's say a sweatshirt is $50, that $50 when someone buys that will go back into programming. So when you show your line item on your budget, when the funds come in your accounting, that's where you're going to show exactly how you're using the funds. So if a sweatshirt costs $50, it's going to go straight to programming. And only a certain percent of that typically is tax deductible for the person that's buying that sweatshirt. But that's why we all have tax exempt specialist CPAs that will do all of our accounting to demonstrate how that $50 sweatshirt went into programming and then was part of it as an expense. So it costs money to make the sweatshirt, right? So that's how another way to do it. So let's say the sweatshirt costs you $5 to make. So really it's a $40 profit. That's what goes into the organization. And you demonstrate that by showing how that goes into programming. So, excuse me, guys. A lot of times what I do, if I'm selling merchandise and the sweatshirt's $50 and groceries cost $40 for someone buying one sweatshirt buys one bag of groceries for a family. And that's usually how I use my messaging and my communication. Reynold, did that answer your question? Sweetleaf Joe, yes, there are foundations that give grants to cannabis nonprofits. So what you'll want to do is when you're out there looking at other nonprofit organizations, Google some of the largest cannabis nonprofits for cannabis serving and look at who their funders are. Look at who their strategic partners are. And then you can also just do a Google search, foundations that support cannabis, and you'll see it tons pop up. There's actually quite a bit. There's even sometimes city funding that is provided to cannabis nonprofits to help them further the fight for social justice within the community. Michael also sharing comment. There's also the concept of OPM, other people's money. A lot of nonprofits that he's been a part of have funded members mostly, which is always a challenge too. Yep. So keep in mind, one of the best ways to fund your nonprofit, we want that unrestricted funding so that you guys have the ability to really provide and run that organization how you want. The key in nonprofits, though, is in your financial accounting. Because you are a public organization, it is public information. So where nonprofits get into a lot of trouble is in their financial management. So you want to be really clear and transparent with your accounting, with your chart of accounts, with your financial management, so that you can demonstrate funds coming in and how that served the community. Typically, overhead is 14% or less of the overall total budget, because the overall amount of funds that do come in should go into programming, and you want to be able to demonstrate that. Any questions, you guys? So what did we do today? We talked about philanthropy and cannabis, right? And how to connect the two, and nonprofit 101. So we gave you an overview of what it is to be a nonprofit, what a nonprofit means. Remember the mindset. Let's treat it like it's a for-profit industry, because we've got expenses, overhead, and we have the community to serve. So bring in the funds so that you can do more for the community, manage your financial accounting and keep clean books, donor cultivation, fundraisers, grant writing, community advocacy. These are the reasons why we have nonprofit organizations, to better our community. And we're the third largest workforce in the United States. So be a part of economic development and growth while you're serving the community. So if you want to stay connected with us, you can hit up our website, thenonprofitplug.com. Follow us on Instagram at The Nonprofit Plug. I am Dr. Sharon Elefant. I am the CEO and founder of The Nonprofit Plug. Anything you guys might need as far as nonprofit, anything, we are that one-stop shop. So we're here to support you guys in the development of further serving your community. Keep in mind, cannabis, philanthropy, it is a thing. It's there. You can Google search a lot of different information on nonprofits that serve the cannabis community and those impacted in the cannabis community. So we'll kind of open it for general questions. Anything about nonprofits, anything on philanthropy, how you raise funds. All right, I see people putting in their Instagram names. We got Winter Watts with Gump Nation. Thank you, Josie. We've got that Nonprofit Plug at The Nonprofit Plug. Ooh, L'Oreal, great question. She says, where should someone begin for starting their nonprofit? A cause, a name, website build out? So if you're thinking about starting a nonprofit, the first thing you should do is, why are you starting a nonprofit? Understand what you're wanting to do, and then we can take it from there. You can hit us up at The Nonprofit Plug on Instagram or our website, thenonprofitplug.com. A cause is going to be one of the best ways to start. Okay, is there something we can do today to reach out to our circle of influencers? Absolutely. So if you guys want to get involved in nonprofits and you want to serve nonprofits more, nonprofits need funding. So if you've got a circle of influencers, have them post the nonprofit, have them create a video and share what the nonprofit is, and give them a call to action. I would say 40 Tons is probably one of the best organizations I've seen as far as marketing and sharing the story. So definitely follow at 40 Tons and look at their Instagram, because that's where you can see how do you really leverage your network and share the story, right? So that's a good one.
I had a question that I think they would want to know. You remember, and I don't know if I know this was kind of like, you know, because we're a client of yours as well, and so you give, you know, this is obviously a free webinar, but then, you know, when you bring you in as a consultant, you go really, really deep with people. But is there a way, you know, can you maybe do a brief overview of the thing that you said where you write down 75 people, you know what I mean? You write and like give them that, because that's something that they could take away today to do that will probably bring in, you know, at least 5 to 10 grand in order to get their or more to get their thing rolling.
Okay. So what Anthony is referring to is my number one plugin. This is the number one plug gem for you guys. So if you've got a nonprofit organization, or even if you're thinking about it and you want to get some funds in the door, write down today 50 to 100 people. Don't judge who these people are going to be. Just think about 50 to 100 people. Then you're going to phone call. You're not going to text them. You're not going to email them. You're not going to DM them. You're going to phone call these 50 to 100 people, and you're going to say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I have a nonprofit organization. Here's our mission. We're trying to, just as an example, feed 50 mouths this month. We're trying to raise X amount of money. Will you be interested in doing a fundraiser for $500 to $1,000 on behalf of our nonprofit organization? And they're either going to say, yeah, we'll totally do that. I'll go leverage my network. We're going to raise $500 to $1,000. That's nothing. Or they're going to be like, here's $500. Now, every 100 people you call, times that by $500, that's all unrestricted funds. I've seen some clients bring in $100,000 in one day. It's kind of like your old school phone-a-thon. So today, your plug of the day, 50 to 100 people, write those names down. You're going to call them. You're going to ask them if they would be, or even ask them how they would like to be a part of your organization. So maybe if you don't want to hit them up with that first $500 to $100 to $1,000 right then and there, ask them to do a fundraiser on behalf of your nonprofit organization. Yeah, it's a great way, like Anthony just said in the comments, it's a great way of asking them for money without asking them directly for money. You're asking them to leverage their network. Can you do this? Like, can your network do this on behalf of our organization? I'm just looking through the comments. Any other comments here? Any other questions? There's a couple of people in the comments that are looking to partner with people. So strategic partnerships are one of the best way to keep your nonprofit sustainable as well. Build a network. Just because you're a nonprofit, you might as well partner with other nonprofits. Maybe they have something that they can provide to your community so that you don't have to create an additional program and have another expense. Anthony, any other questions? Any other questions, you guys? Stay connected with us at the Nonprofit Plug.
Yes. Are there any, because the most important thing about nonprofits is, or not the most important thing, but the most important challenge that people have is raising money and raising funds. So it's like, you know, reaching out to 100 people that, you know, just literally write their names down. These could be anybody, even if they're broke. It's not about asking them for money. It's about leveraging who they know and just saying, hey, would you mind sharing this? Right. That's the first thing. Yep. Are there anything else that we can do that is low-hanging fruit to start looking for those types of funding resources? Because going to Google and typing in grants, okay, maybe, but then now you need a grant writer, and then that takes time. You know what I mean? So like, what are some other low-hanging fruit opportunities that can help people get, you know, at least a little bit of funds in the door at the moment?
Sure. So it's kind of in the whole grant services world, but some of the low-hanging fruit that I like to tell folks to go after, your local city funding. So a lot of times you can walk into your city office, find the, like if you're in education, find the person that's like the field rep for education. They have unrestricted funding within their office to provide to nonprofits. And it's usually, shockingly, one of the fastest ways to get unrestricted funds for your nonprofit. So you've got your 50 to 100 people. You're going to work on your donor cultivation. You're going to walk into your local city council office or go online and find who the rep is and start getting to know them and building those relationships and getting some of those unrestricted funds. And then another way is that's really easy is your Smart and Finals. You can get a $500 check mailed to you. Your Trader Joe's, your Vons, your Ralph's. If you have those types, if you have your IRS letter of determination, you can just go online and fill out a 2-second application and they'll cut you a check. So if you start doing lots of those, it adds up to a couple $1,000s over time and it gives you guys some starting funds. I can explain what restricted and unrestricted is. So unrestricted funds, those are funds that come to you guys that have no requirement on how you spend the funds. So you can, for the most part, you can use it to pay staff. You can use it to pay for expenses, to pay for anything the nonprofit needs. Restricted funds, which are usually how grants come, it means it has a very specific reason you have to use those funds for that and only that. Otherwise, they'll pull the funds from you. So a lot of times with grants, you have to report. So I always like to go after unrestricted funds, which are typically from donors and from fundraisers.
Kristen Floor had a question. Shout out Kristen Floor. She's an amazing human being. She fights for the freeing of cannabis prisoners, along with Carly Kramer over at Freedom Grow, Stephanie Landa, the whole team over there, Randy Lanier. She asked, what do you need to know to write a grant?
Excellent question. So that's all part of grant readiness. So each grant has their own specific requirement, but for the most part, you're going to need an organization narrative. You're going to need a program description, and you're going to need either an organizational budget, which is your overall nonprofit budget, or a program specific budget. On the minimum, those are what you're going to need in addition to data. How many people have you served, their gender, their race, age and income, sometimes some of that kind of stuff. So on the most minimal level, what do you need to know to write a grant? Your narrative, your program description, your operating budget or your program budget, and some impact data.
Do you provide services like that? Do you help people with budgets? Do you help people with like some of these preliminary documents that you need? And what if someone can't afford, let's say, your entire package that's, $5 or $10 grand? Do you offer a la carte services to do individual things like that? So then that way people can work within the budgets that they have.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, we do provide all of these services, everything you mentioned, Dave, whether you want to do a formation or incorporation, if you need financial management, if you need grant services, we do provide all of that. And we typically we do packages, but we can piecemeal things out. So if you need help with just a narrative of your organization, we can write that for you. Maybe you just need bylaws. Maybe you just need us to come in and run one board meeting for you. Maybe you need us to write a program description. Maybe you need us to put together a budget. We absolutely can try to piece those out for you to help you stay within your budget that aligns with what you guys are doing. Or we can provide complete a la carte services. We even come in and do interim executive director support as well, or even research and recruitment.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I know a lot of the people in the audience definitely could utilize a lot of that stuff. These are all great people that are doing different things within the space. What I will say to this, from running a nonprofit ourselves, L'Oreal and I had a nonprofit called the Jump for Joy Foundation in Las Vegas, Nevada. You can Google it, YouTube it, Jump for Joy Foundation, and then my name or whatever. One of the things that we found that was the biggest way to get funding was our media. The more content that you put out, the more you showcase what it is that you're doing online via video, via pictures, via engagement. Everybody wants to see what is going on. And you unfortunately, you have to appeal to the vanity of some of these big companies sometimes. And sometimes that comes in the form of media and PR. So I would focus on putting stuff up on social media, making videos, showing the world what it is that you're doing so that they can see it And what that will do is it'll give you a value in terms of what your impression count is. So if they were to pay for marketing and buy $1,000 worth of marketing from you, what would that look like, right? But you're not selling marketing, you're raising funds for your nonprofit. But in them giving you that $1,000, they'll know that they're going to get an X amount of impressions across an X amount of platforms. And I found that that was the quickest way to get people to really want to support you, because you're advertising them, kind of like what we're doing at the bottom where it says Tons of Knowledge, Nonprofits 101, powered by Good Green, right? So now everybody that sees this will see the Good Green name, and that's an extra impression that they're getting, right? And so things of that nature is what you can do to help make things better. And so that's just my kind of 2 cents on creating value for the donor.
Creating value for the donor. And two, it's also just kind of like in the nonprofit sector, people know you're a nonprofit and you're going to ask for money and you're going to have needs. It's like your one time to just be annoying. So I will do whatever I can to get what I need. So if I've got a nonprofit and I'm trying to get some money, especially if I'm trying to go from a political office, I'm going to be so annoying until you talk to me and you give me the funds I need for my organization. So it's okay to put yourself out there, to just get everybody with what you're doing, your impact, showing what you're doing. Nobody can say no to, I'm feeding the mouths of 5 children. So come up with your pitch, come up with your service, come up with your clear ask, have a very clear ask. I need 5 couches. I have 5 guys incarcerated that I'm working with that need X, Y, and Z, and their families need X, Y, and Z. Be specific in your message.
That's a great point. So basically distill down what you're asking for. So instead of saying something to someone like, we're advocating to get all the prisoners out of jail, say, here are 5 prisoners XYZ name that need $50 a month so that they could be able to have hygiene products.
Yep.
And distill it down. So then that way you get that. Or, we want to be able to provide medicine to 10 patients next week, and it's going to be at a cost of, $550 or whatever. That's arbitrary, but you're saying distill it down into your ask.
Yep. Be specific. Any other questions? Anything else you guys want to know about nonprofits? Anything else you want to know about philanthropy?
If no one has any questions, before we get out of here, why don't you just tell us what made you get into this world and why you're so passionate about helping others do this?
Sure. So I just, like I was mentioning kind of earlier, I grew up with the concept of Tikkun Olam. It's the basis for my culture. My family is Jewish, and it's although a religion and a race. So more so for me, it was the foundation for my race, for my culture, is ingrained in me to serve the community, to heal the world, to repair the world, to provide for a greater good. And I always just kind of grew up in the nonprofit sector, in and out of volunteering, in and out of healthcare, in and out of providing resources. And I have a blast talking to people. And I was like, I need a job and a career where I literally can get just paid to talk to people and just build relationships. And that's what the nonprofit sector is. And I found my niche in putting all of this together and providing partnerships and access to resources. And I like being the plug for people. It makes me happy. It makes me feel good. I like being the go-to for these kind of things. And I just wanted to be the plug. So I became the nonprofit plug, and it's very life fulfilling for me. And it's just a part of my character. So the more I can do to serve the community and fight for the people that are in our community that need to be fought for, that's what I like to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sharon. We really appreciate this. We're going to post this on all of the platforms. I believe it goes straight to LinkedIn and YouTube and all those places. It's just an evergreen piece of content. We'll chop it up for some social stuff as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining this webinar. This is 40 Tons presents Tons of Knowledge. We thank you for supporting us, Dr. Sharon, and providing this education. And I suggest everybody that is on this webinar, that hears this webinar, reach out to Dr. Sharon. She's mad connected and plugged. So once you get to know her and you get to, you connect, it's not just about giving you the education. It's also about like helping you get to the finish line. Like she was able to get the 40 Tons Foundation 501c3 set up fairly fast. She's connected us with people in the community that are doing things. And like she's the one. So back in the day when you had your weed plug, she's the nonprofit plug. You know what I'm saying? So it's and she's just an overall great human being, and she's super intelligent. And so she's in Los Angeles. I don't know if you guys caught that, but she is in Southern California. So maybe we could if you guys are in the Southern California area, you can link with her directly in person. So much love, much respect, Dr. Sharon.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yes, we appreciate you. Thank you, Sweet Leaf. Thank you, Reynald Fabre. Hopefully I said that right. Thank you, Michael Hoffman. Thank you, Kristen Floor. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Dion. Thank you, Angel. And for everybody else that was in the room, we want to thank you so much. Much love, much respect. 40 Tons is doing a career conference on June 19th in the Chicago area. So if you want to join that, and you guys are from Chicago or you know anyone in the Chicago area, please reach out to us. This is all about impact. This is all about making it happen. And we love and we appreciate you. Peace and love, everybody.